When I first reviewed Volair's Mach 1 Forza, I found it to have very high spin levels and great control. Now Volair has introduced their second thermoformed Forza model, the Mach 2 Forza, which has a pretty unique wide-body shape and has been reported to have even higher spin rates than the Mach 1 Forza has. I'll compare and contrast these two paddles with each other and to some other comparable paddles so that you can know if either of these two paddles might be right for you. And if you like the review, do something crazy and subscribe. As far as similarities go, both of the Forza models are thermoformed and each are offered in both the 14 and 16mm versions. These paddles are both listed at $180, which can be reduced to $162 with the discount code PICKLEBALLMID. When each of these paddles arrived, they came in the signature Volair gift box, fully equipped with a paddle cover, a replacement grip, a paddle eraser to clean the paddle with, and a different colored handle band. They also both fall under Volair's 30-day no questions asked return policy and have a 90-day warranty. Something that I think is also very worth mentioning is that, at least anecdotally, I personally haven't heard very many reports of thermoform paddles made by Volair having delamination issues. I also scavenged the internet to see what evidence I could find on this matter, and I did find a couple of questionable reports of some possible delamination or core crushing issues, but even those were somewhat hard to find. This is opposed to other companies making thermoform paddles that still seem to be struggling with these issues quite regularly. For me personally, I've had the Mach 1 Forza since it was released and have played with it on and off since then, and it still performs as good as it did for me out of the box. When looking at the shape of the Mach 1 Forza, even though it has rounded upper corners, it technically meets specifications for an elongated shaped paddle with an overall length of 16.5 inches, as opposed to the usual cutoff of around 16.25 inches for a hybrid shaped paddle. The new Mach 2 Forza has quite a different design, however. It has a more square, wide-body shape with a reduction in overall length to 15.88 inches and a width of 8.12 inches, making it a bit more wide and a little shorter than the Mach 1 Forza. A paddle of comparable shape might be the Joola Scorpeus, whose edges are just a little bit more square than the Mach 2 Forza, and the handle of which is a quarter inch shorter than that of the Mach 2 Forza as well. The Mach 1 Forza has a swing weight in the ranges of 113 to 117, depending on if you go with the 14 or the 16mm versions, and corresponding twist weights in the 6 to 6.5 range, while the Mach 2 Forza has a swing weight of 106 to 108 and a twist weight around 7. The numbers for both of these models should correlate to pretty high maneuverability and stability, with the Mach 2 Forza being a little bit more maneuverable and also a little more stable feeling with a larger sweet spot. I've always thought that the Mach 1 Forza felt pretty maneuverable, and I still do, but the Mach 2 Forza takes that to a new level. The Mach 2 Forza felt pretty lightning fast, and I surprised myself with the adjustments I could make with it at the net, especially since the one I preferred and played with the most was the 16mm version. It reminded me a lot of how the 10mm Onix Premier Pro handled in terms of maneuverability, which was also an incredibly easy paddle to whip around and at high spin levels, but that paddle had huge pop and was pretty difficult to control. The Mach 2 Forza, on the other hand, is very easy to control your shots with and has a much more forgiving sweet spot. It also has the same 5.5 inch handle as the Mach 1 Forza, which leaves plenty of room for two hands. It did take me a couple of games to get used to that Mach 2 shape, but during just my second session playing with it, I forgot I was even playing with the new paddle, and it felt pretty natural to use with no conscious thoughts about the shape at all. Comparing the Mach 2 Forza to some other paddles I consider control-oriented, I thought it had better spin, pop, and maneuverability than the Selkirk Luxx, but maybe a touch lower top ball speed on drives and serves due to its lower overall weight without lead tape. I thought the Joola Scorpeus had a little bit more pop and power, but the Mach 2 Forza had a subjectively better sweet spot, controllability, and spin application. The Loco produces more overall power and has a comparably large sweet spot and produces great spin as well, and even though I felt the Loco was pretty maneuverable, the Mach 2 is definitely just in my top few paddles for new maneuverability and is a little bit faster than the Loco in the hands. The Loco also comes with a customer appreciation box with some cool stuff like the Forza paddles do, but I was also able to order some hot sauce with the Loco. The Vatic Prism Flash is a great go-to control paddle for a cheaper price than the Mach 2 Forza, but is a non-thermoformed carbon fiber paddle, and in most ways I do think the Mach 2 Forza performs better, including aspects of spin, pop, and maneuverability, but at a higher cost. Comparing the Mach 2 Forza to the Mach 1 Forza again, both generate some of the greatest spin on the market, with the Mach 2 having a slight increase in measured RPMs at 2,110 versus Mach 1's RPMs measured at 2,044. The spin of both of these models are very noticeable in gameplay, and typically I would say that you wouldn't be able to tell a difference between RPM measurements that are that close, but I do feel like I noticed just a touch of increased spin from the Mach 2, which I attribute to its very easy maneuverability and being able to whip the paddle really fast in pretty much any situation. I would say that in terms of power or max speed imparted on drives and putaways, however, the Mach 1 Forza carries the advantage. The Mach 1 Forza is a pretty well balanced paddle with good control, and I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a power paddle, but the elongated shape does allow it to generate more power overall than the Mach 2 Forza. When comparing to other popular elongated paddles, I think the Mach 1 Forza is a little less powerful and less poppy than the Carbon 1X, the Joola Perseus, or the bread and butter Filth, but is by far the easiest to control of any of these paddles, and shares the top of that list in terms of perceived spin alongside the bread and butter Filth, which is also very maneuverable and generates great spin. The Forza is also cheaper than most of these other options, beaten only by bread and butter Filth. Comparing those two specifically, the bread and butter Filth is also a thermoformed paddle with very strong spin and is one of the most maneuverable elongated paddles around. Different than the Mach 1 Forza, however, the Filth has pretty good pop and is a spinny paddle that leans more on the power side, whereas the Mach 1 Forza is a spinny paddle that leans more on the control side. And depending on what you prefer, I also felt the Filth had a slightly more stiff face compared to the face of the Mach 1 Forza, which may also lean a little bit on the stiff side, but sits closer to the middle of the road than the Filth does. And comparing the shape of any elongated paddle to that of the Mach 2 Forza, it's probably pretty intuitive that you'll get more of a reach advantage from the Mach 1 Forza from the overall longer paddle length, and the sweet spot is located a little higher on the paddle face as well, adding to the perceived reach advantage of the Mach 1 Forza. And in terms of sweet spots, the Mach 1 Forza feels like a good and pretty standard sized sweet spot, especially for an elongated paddle, but again, the shape of the Mach 2 Forza makes for a very wide sweet spot and very little places you'd hit on the paddle face that would feel poorly. And the nice thing about both of these paddles, especially the Mach 2 Forza, is that the light feel and the high maneuverability give them both plenty of wiggle room to add weighted tape for customization without feeling too heavy. To put all the important takeaways together, both of these thermoformed paddles have great maneuverability, control, really high spin rates, and have the exact same price point. While the Mach 2 Forza has slightly better spin, a wider sweet spot, and is ultra maneuverable, the Mach 1 Forza provides better reach and has improved power when compared to the Mach 2 Forza. If you're a person who likes control and spin, either of these paddles could probably be a good choice for you. But if you're in the market for a paddle that clearly falls in the power category, these paddles may not be right for you. That's my take on these two Volair paddles, and I hope you enjoyed the review.